I'm really pleased to be here this morning, and I want to introduce another member of our team. It's Sean Reid-Bicknell, if you just want to stand up, Sean, who's actually the guy who's doing all the analysis. And if you did the survey, you probably have heard from him. And he's going to help us out with some of the discussions a little bit later. And it's also great to see so many people in Western wear, since this is Stampede Week, and it's really true. You won't see many three-piece suits this week. Next week maybe, but not this week. Anyhow, what we're going to be presenting today is just the highlights from the second biannual survey that we have done with the CBAA. This was the first one was done in 2017, and somebody asked me earlier today, said, "Well, you're in Calgary. How did you end up doing this?" And I said, "It's because we had done work with WestJet for a number of years on various aspects of pilots and other aspects of the airlines." So that's where our background on this comes from. Anyhow, we are compensation consultants, and we do national compensation surveys. We've done them for over 20 years, and we're very pleased to be working with you on this one. So the purpose of the survey was really to collect salary and employer practices, and we certainly heard at the outset this year that there was a lot of concern for attraction and retention, particularly for pilots in this sector, and that certainly is areas that we added additional questions for this particular survey. This was a confidential survey, no cost to participants, because CBAA is certainly supporting this, and those who have participated and completed will receive the full general results. There will be a high-level summary that will be published by CBAA in the fall, and we haven't completely finished our analysis yet, have we, Sean? So it's going to take a little while to do that, so we will have to go through the processes of getting there by September. So the survey has included the cash comparisons for 63 different positions, and this is 11 more than last time, and we looked at quite a wide range from management, administrative services, ramp attendants, flight crew, maintenance, safety, and rotary. And the focus has been for the last two times on the employer practices on benefits, allowances, and certainly incentives has become a bigger and more important aspect that we've done more work on. For this year, we added 11 new benchmark positions. We found from the last time that there's some variations in the aircraft classes, and we looked at weight. We looked at classes rather than just weight this time. So we hope that has been more effective. We certainly will ask for your feedback at the end of this, so that we can improve this, because this is only the second one we've done. And then the really big issue that people were interested in this time were on attraction, retention, and turnover, which of course is what we're talking about here. There was a steering committee of CBAA members that provided direction on new positions and employer practices, because this is your survey. We're just providing the service to provide the information for you, and we wanted to make sure it really is your survey. And there's certainly the CBAA provided major assistance in distributing and doing some promotion and organizing the steering committee, et cetera. And the data was collected between May 15th and we'll say June 30th. Well, there's still a few dribbling in this week. But we will have it completely completed by the end of this week. At least that's our expectation. So the results will be in August, and the summary report will be in September. So demographics. Good news, we had 54 organizations participate this time, which was 9 more than last time. So that was an increase, or was it 10 more than last time? And it was an increase of almost 20%. So we were very pleased to see that. I know people had said to us during the first surveys that, oh, well, I just don't have time right now, but we'll do it next time. And the good news is that there has been an increased participation and across all the different areas and sectors. So the key industry sectors that we looked at this time are charter companies, of course, airlines, corporate aviation, maintenance, and manufacturing. And here are some graphs of the areas. You can see that it was a fairly even split, a little more on the corporate side, and airlines and charter was slightly larger than the airlines, and we included both scheduled and non-scheduled airlines in that airline sector. And you can see that we had a wide range of revenues of small to very large companies, and the same with employee counts, because it probably depends on which sector you're in, how big the employee count is. So the initial trends is we looked at cash comparisons, and this was similar approach that we used last time. Last time we looked at comparisons from 2013 to 2017, because SkyService and SunWest Aviation had supported a survey at that point in time. So this time we actually think we have very much closer comparisons because we use the same positions. And we grouped them into these families. You can see that the differentials between the corporate groups and the airlines, corporate tends to pay the best. That tends to be the case for in virtually all areas, and then corporate versus maintenance and manufacturing. So clearly there's fairly significant difference between the management, sales, and maintenance. Mind you, the flight crews are not much different, which is very interesting. So in what we've been hearing today in Rolly's session as well as Suzanne's, it certainly is clear that there is a focus particularly on pilots as attraction and retention issues. So looking at differentials overall, that there was actually it wasn't significantly different between all of them, but they were between 4 and 4.8%, the flight crew being the highest, which again was not a surprise, and the average was 4.4%. And that was over 2 years, so that certainly is keeping pace with inflation and cost of living, and from our other major surveys that we do, and we do some trend surveys in the spring and fall, that the typical increases in companies have been in the last couple of years between 2.5, up to 3 if you're living in Vancouver. And so this is fairly consistent with those overall increases that we've seen. Now, we also looked at larger versus smaller companies and found that there was a difference. The larger companies do tend to pay a little more, particularly at the management level. That's not a surprise because the scope of the jobs at the management level are probably greater, and the dollar figures involved are greater. Sales and administrative, there wasn't as much difference, nor was maintenance. So you'll have to stay tuned for the detailed results later in the month on this. Now, here's the areas that we added this year. So we spent some time looking through some average time to fill jobs, because this is certainly an indication of what the market looks like. And the higher the average time to fill in days, of course, the bigger the issue is in attracting people. And what was interesting here is we had expected the flight crews to be the highest, but they weren't. It was, in fact, maintenance. But they're not significantly different. But if you look at the time, that I don't think if you can't read it, it says 41 days for flight crews on average and 52 for maintenance. So that was a bit of a surprise for us. And if we break this down between the different groups, the average time to fill was, as you can see here, 50 days for flight crews for corporate, 76 for management. And then the airlines, it was only 20 days. So that was interesting. They seemed to be easier for the airlines to attract, especially flight crews. So in knowing that the focus of this conference is primarily on the corporate or charter airlines, that we can see here that the regular airlines have an easier time than the corporate organizations do, or even the charters. So here's the charters. The charters were 28% for the flight crews, and maintenance manufacturing were even higher, although they're probably not as big a component in the maintenance and manufacturing area. So, but in every case, the maintenance jobs were the most difficult to fill. So have you found that? Is that true? Yeah. Anyhow, numbers don't lie. So looking at attraction strategies, again, overall, we will break these down into more detail when we do the more detailed analysis. But the top way for attracting recruits was employee referrals, and that's quite common in many sectors, that employee referrals tend to be a very positive way to bring people into the organization, and particularly if they know somebody in the organization already. Job boards, of course, very common now. Company websites, and those two are very closely linked. Social media, and that's a very broad perspective. And then Airline Association information, so there you are. That's a little bit smaller because it's a little more specific. But that employee referral is certainly the biggest strategy that's being used. Now, looking at the types of processes used for interviews, a lot of things have changed in recruiting in the last 10 years, because everything is, tends to be online. But look at this. This is interesting to see that still 90% used one-on-one interviews, and that may not be at the beginning. That may be further down the line, but it's still important to have a one-on-one interview. You can't have a computer do the whole thing for you. And phone interviews have certainly become a much bigger approach that many people are using. We find even in our own business with a small consulting company that we do phone interviews before we meet people in person, just because it's so much more efficient. And panel interviews and multiple structured sort of interviews are certainly fairly common at 50% and 44%, and group interviews. So all those are variations on more than one person in on the interview. And I think the advantage of that, when you can do it, whether it's over the phone or whether it's in person, is that you can get some different perspectives on how people answer. Or you can have people that have different interests in the candidate assessing what they are saying. So turnover, and we looked at we asked for 2019 to date and 2018, but we will present both in the report, but the 2018 is the whole year, so it's the larger number. And interesting enough, it was FBO operations. Now that wasn't the largest group of organization, but it certainly, or people, but it certainly was one with the highest, and that was 27%. What was interesting is the flight crew overall was only just over 7%, which kind of surprised us. And maintenance was just slightly higher than that. And then we just looked at the airlines, because the airlines had the highest turnover. So we picked this one. Again, we'll show you all of them in the report, but we didn't want to blast you with too many different graphs for this brief overview. But you can see here that the flight crew was now 10%, and the FBO operations 36%, ramp attendants 40%. So obviously there are some challenges there. So further on retention, we asked about some strategies that were used to support professional advancement or career progression. And salary increases are typically an indication of your performance and that your worth to the organization. Benefits tend to be more important now than they used to be, particularly with younger employees. That benefits used to be, well, that's nice, I've got them, but I think because of the recessions that we've just gone through, and in some cases benefits have been cut, that people are more aware of the importance of benefits than they used to be. Bonuses, and I'll talk a little bit more about bonuses. As compensation consultants, we're always strongly supportive of using variable pay rather than just fixed pay, because it's very cost effective for employers, and it often provides a really strong indication to employees that they really are valued by the organization. Professional development is usually number one on the list of employees of what they consider to be most valuable or most important to them. And that's additional training, and whether it's formal or whether it's informal is typically viewed as the most critical issue for employees in staying with the company. And the last one is share programs. Now, this is up about 4% from last year. Overall, and there's about 28% now. So that certainly is an area where there is some growth. So we are seeing some growth in that variable pay scenario, such as the bonuses and the share programs. So a few more points on those. The industry sectors that pilots most frequently move to when they leave a job, we asked that question, and by and far the strongest was that they will move to corporate jobs or to airlines, but the corporate jobs were certainly the biggest draw. And I think there's lots of reasons for that, and lots of individual sorts of flexibility, et cetera. And then I put disability on there, and it was less than 10%, but there was certainly an indication by a number of employers that pilots did become disabled and had to leave their current roles. And it wasn't the major ones, but it was certainly significant enough to show. Now, the other part that's probably more interesting is that there certainly is a trend to increase use of both short-term and long-term incentive plans. And that's not just in the aviation industry. Certainly there's the same in most industries, and even in public sector, there's more short-term and not so many long-term incentives. So share plans are more common at management level. Profit-sharing plans are more common at other levels. So, and that is something that you can implement throughout an organization. In looking at short-term incentive plans specifically, the most commonly provided to pilots are individual bonuses, and I believe that was certainly, of those that received incentive plans, that was something like 50%. Next was profit sharing, and then finally a team bonus. So it really depends on how your organization is structured as to what strategy is going to be most effective. Now, for the use of long-term incentive plans for pilots, that has increased to approximately 10% of participating companies. So that is probably a trend. And if we're talking about retention, longer-term sort of plans are certainly one way of encouraging people to stay. Obviously, as has been said earlier, that work-life balance and corporate culture can have a huge impact on people's decisions to stay or to go. But from a compensation perspective, this is certainly an area that's worth considering. So, as I said earlier, the results will be of the trends will be published by CBAA in September, and participants will receive results before the end of August, right? Customized reports will also be available for a fee. So we can offer a service where we could remove your data and do a comparison of your data to industry if that's something that would be of interest to you. And we'd be happy to talk to you about that. And then about us, I've been around for a long time. I have lots of millennials that are working for me just to keep, the average age down. And we provide a lot of different services. Besides surveys, we also do comp programs, incentive programs, et cetera. Anyhow, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm certainly open to questions right now, or we can do that later.